Greetings from WTM in London. I'm Noah Charney. I'm an American expat living for more than a decade in Slovenia, and I'm equally excited to share it with you as from I first arrived. I still think it is just about the best country in the world I could imagine to live in or to visit. And in this session, I'm speaking with Marko Drpić, who runs TipoRenesansa, a very analog, mechanical, old-fashioned printmaking shop in Ljubljana, right along the Ljubljana River. It's a beautiful location. And also Danijel Omerzel from Ljubljana Tourism. And now we're talking about traditional crafts in Ljubljana and Slovenia. In particular, in this age of experiential tourism, where you want to travel not just to see things, but also to gain experiences. What are some traditional crafts that you can engage in when you visit Ljubljana? Let's begin with you, Marko. Tell me about your passion for printmaking. Where did it begin?
It started several years ago, actually 25 years ago, when I walked into a print shop to sign proofs so they can start production, and I had a little extra time, and I started to wander around, and there was a door with an inscription, "Composing Room," which drew my attention and asked permission to enter. And the magic happened. It was a kind of space where they would put all the equipment that they wouldn't need. So I asked them, gave them my card, and I asked them, if you're ever going to throw this away, call me. And I got that call in a year time. So that's how it started. Then the second big step was in 2010, Ljubljana was a world book capital. And I knocked the city council door. It was way too late for all the subsidies and everything. But I told them I have some equipment that is connected to print production. So maybe it's a good idea to expose it publicly, and we'll see. And then my life changed for good.
So let's go a little bit deeper, because you're here at WTM with printmaking equipment. In fact, a section of your studio accompanied you here, but we can't see that on camera at the moment. Could you maybe describe to people what they would see if they could see you in action just a few meters over off camera?
So thanks to Slovenian Tourist Organization, we brought 2 tons of equipment. One piece, a huge piece, is a letter cabinet. So that's around 1 ton, and it's got all the lead type that you would traditionally see in every print shop 100 years ago. So that's part of my workshop. So that's how the letters are composed. And then we brought over the proof press machine. So that's another nearly a ton. And that's where we do actually print. And then we brought a half-made poster that I finished here at WTM. And that's what people could experience when they come over.
Now, just before I grabbed you for this interview, there were 3 people waiting in line to have you make a print for them. What's the process like? What would you show people if you see it here? And what did you do before you arrived? You mentioned that there were 2 rounds of printing that took place before you actually brought the nearly finished prints here that you finish on site.
Yes, making this poster, it's a landscape of Ljubljana, 3 bridges, which are quite well known to all the locals, of course. I started this designing first of all the landscape, and then I carved it in lino, like we all did at school. Since it's a multicolor print, I had to do separate plate for each color. So starting with red, I carved it, I printed it, had to wait overnight for the ink to dry, and went on with the second color, turquoise color. Printed that the second day, and waited overnight, and then I had to compose the inscription Ljubljana, and it's at the bottom it's written, printed or by hand on Japanese knotweed paper, because the paper is also quite special. So that's the 3rd step, and this is what I do at the fair. And when somebody comes, I explain how the composition was made, lead type, all the spacers, how everything is fixed in the machine, and what kind of the machinery I use to do that. And then I simply ink it and run the poster over the machine, and voila, as a finished print.
We're going to come back to you to talk more about printmaking in a moment, but right now I'd like to bring you in, Danijel, and can you tell us about some of the crafts that tourists can engage in when they come to visit Ljubljana, some of them with traditions in Ljubljana and Slovenia?
Thank you very kindly. Yeah, it all started in autumn 2021 when we adopted our new strategy for development of destination of Ljubljana for the next 6 years. And we started with the project of preserving and collaborating with traditional handicrafts in Ljubljana. So there was a huge research involved, analysis, and 1 year later we launched them on the market. Yeah. So apart from Marko's TipoRenesansa printing workshop, we have also some others like the pottery class. We have umbrella repair lady. We have also master goldsmith and silversmith workshop. And last but not least, we have also weaving workshop, weaving from A to Z. Yeah.
So I'm interested in the wishes of the public. Tourists now are looking not just for beautiful places to visit, not just for good restaurants to eat in, not just good museums to visit, but also unique experiences that they can get perhaps only in a single place. And I'm not sure how many tourist organizations are launching umbrella repair workshops, but I'm fascinated by the idea of this. Have you found that this is something that tourists come to Ljubljana for, or are they just delighted when they get here that they wind up adding it to their itinerary?
Well, definitely at the moment it's not a motive to arrive to Ljubljana, but it's just a nice add-on because it's a niche product. And yesterday I was just listening to a presentation of World Travel Report. And what we already knew at Ljubljana Tourism, I also heard it yesterday, that 65% of travelers are seeking, so more travelers comparing to 5 years ago, are seeking for some alternative special experiences, you know. So that's where our workshops come right on the spot.
Do you have the idea that in the future there might be an ever-expanding offering of these experiences that are unique to Ljubljana? And is it more in terms of handicrafts, or are people interested in things like bespoke tours, for instance, involving Jože Plečnik's architecture, the famous architect who designed so many iconic buildings in Ljubljana? What do you think the direction is in terms of what tourists are looking for?
I would say both, because Jože Plečnik is actually very special for Ljubljana. You know, he's one of the 7 world architects which are in UNESCO Heritage List. So that's definitely a motive to visit Ljubljana. He made a huge impact of our city. So I would say both, let's say, kind of experiences will be really strong in the future. Apart from Jože Plečnik, let's say the architecture, also these kind of niche products, which are at the moment they are niche, but they won't be forever.
So Marko, I'm interested, tell me about TipoRenesansa. What sort of workshops do you run? And more specifically, what type of printers do you use? Because I understand there's all sorts of different types of printers used throughout history. Tell me about the one that you acquired when people were getting rid of it when they gave you that phone call.
So, first question: what kind of workshops do I run? Well, in the summer, when we get most of the attention, it's workshops for visitors, and people come like families, or there might be team building. Sometimes bigger groups. Sometimes on a rainy day, just a couple that would spend she would give him workshop as a birthday present. So this is kind of a context. And then the second question was, how did I acquire the equipment?
And what kind is it specifically?
Yeah, okay. So the majority equipment, it's called letterpress equipment, or basically the equipment that was used to print with movable type. So that's something that Gutenberg invented. So the equipment that I have is a lot of lead type, around 6 tons. But that's not alone. So you need a lot of tools and a lot of printing machines. And we have everything from baby tabletop machines up to 2.5 tons proof presses, and everything in between. So now over the years it grew to 20 tons. And majority of it, not all of it, one can see at any given time when entering the print shop there in a working state.
So I did a workshop with you, And I wish we could do one live here, but it's not going to work logistically. But can you basically tell people what it looks like? So analog printmaking requires significant patience, organization, and focus. Can you walk us through what the process looks like? Because it's more complicated and more interesting than most people think.
Indeed, that was quite a tough question for me. People usually don't have the whole day to spend in the print shop, which would be a nice thing to do, of course, to pass on the whole knowledge. So what can you do in 1.5 hour with a process that is so time demanding? So I decided first of all what the content is going to be, and I decided I'll go for Slovene alphabet. Slovene alphabet, we of course all identify with the language, and Slovene alphabet first of all is funny alphabet, only 25 letters. Secondly, there's characters that repeat. So we only are left with 22 letters now. So how do we communicate? So I think it's also a very good starting point. And nobody brings alphabet home. Like, why would you? You bring a dragon from Ljubljana, of course. So this is a starting point. And then we wrap it in a kind of series of decisions. First of all, we need to be graphic designers. We have to give it some shape. So I walk people through this. And then we have to put our hands on, like, how are we going to do? What kind of material are we going to use? How is it all packed? We have to take, in this case, wood type, which we still have quite a lot of in our collection. We start arranging the wood type on a press bed, and then we have to go into more detail with doing all the spacings manually. So that's where we lose quite a lot of time. People think it's like it's going to take us 10 minutes. It's not 10 minutes. So, and then when you finish that, we have to lock the composition quite firmly into the machine, so that the printing ink doesn't pull it out when we start printing. And then I give a quick explanation how the machine works. We work on usually the workshops are done on a proof press. So this is a press that you would use before going to a real machine to prove what you have done, to maybe correct some mistakes, and then you carry on. And usually people need 5 minutes to get a knowledge of how. And I specifically, especially with the bigger groups, encourage them to listen carefully, because I usually say this only once, so they would pass on the knowledge to next person. So there's a paper feeding machine, a paper feeding person, printer, quality control, of course, somebody who inks the composition. So they all have to cooperate, which is at a certain moment really nice thing to do, and I just step back. Okay. Yeah, and it used to function on its own.
So every few years, it seems, although in historical moments it's been every few generations, there's some huge technological advance that people are worried will ruin everything that came before. And inevitably it turns out to be just another tool that doesn't ruin things of the past, but just opens new doors. You could think about the invention of photography, which just shifted the direction that painting took instead of destroying it altogether. Even the original movable type printing press, some people thought that was the end of the good old days of monks transcribing things by hand. What are your thoughts on the advances in AI software and what it means for traditional analog printing?
Yeah, that's a very interesting answer. Question really difficult to answer. Well, I will use quotes because I recently came across some really nice quotes. One of them was, as you said already, AI is just another tool, and we have to use to get used to it. It's not able to do a lot of things. We just have to maybe adjust our values. What are our values? It's going to replace something, but we can use it for good or for bad. So we have to set up our values first, I guess, and then it's going to be okay, I think. There is a professor who said, well, use AI, and then I will judge you on what you find it did wrong, because what it did right, okay, that's fine, but what it did wrong, so that's our place. That's where we come in, what we can do better. And I'm not really afraid with the interaction with mechanical, because already now we can use computer in pre-press and then make a printing plate and put it in a machine that is not really electrified. So that's how completely up-to-date modern world cooperates with a mechanical world. I'm fine with that. And of course, it's not going to be mainstream business or economic. In terms of economy, it's not. It doesn't bring any significant income, of course. But like, I teach a lot, and the students lack experience with skipping steps with digital tools, and I've noticed that I quite like it going step by step with something that they didn't think of at all, and that's one mission, and I like it.
Could you tell us this fun fact? Where do we get the term uppercase and lowercase from?
That's an interesting one. Well, centuries ago, of course, now we have a lot of different glyphs in one drawer. Not only, I don't know, in English, maybe 30 characters. We need uppercase, we need lowercase, of course, we need punctuation. But back in the day, they would physically separate bigger letters from smaller letters. So when you would send your apprentice to bring you the uppercase, meaning bigger letters, he would literally pick the uppercase. Or you would bring the lowercase. And of course, we forgot where it came from, but we still use it in everyday life. Also, whenever in everyday life we use MS Word to do some text, you set up the height of letters in some number. Let's say it's 12, but the unit is points. That's exactly where points come from. It's the printing world. So this didn't change.
Danijel, I'm curious, in your experience, what do tourists who come to Ljubljana without maybe so much expectation of what they're going to find there, what are the things that usually most delight them and surprise them in a positive way?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say that, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, when visitors arrived to Ljubljana, they really had, let's say, low or medium-low expectations about the city, you know. But nowadays, I'm pretty sure majority of them, they know what to expect in Ljubljana. They heard from their friends, from their family who visited already. They watched it on TV or social media or whatever. But in general, I would say they're mostly surprised about the cleanliness of the city, the safety, and the architecture. You know, you've been to Ljubljana, you said, so you know the old city center, pedestrian zone, so traffic-free area. They love that. They love that it's everything is walkable. So it's, I would say, it's just the right size city to visit.
I'm also was one of the people who wound up moving there because I liked Jože Plečnik's architecture so much. I wound up doing my PhD in his architecture, and I settled on living in Slovenia largely because I was interested in the aesthetics of Ljubljana based on a visit as a tourist. So people can even move there if they like it enough. Marko, one of the things that Slovenia prides itself on is being a green, sustainable country in terms of tourism and in terms of lifestyle. And one of the things I was struck with is you're printing on paper that's not actually made from trees. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it's actually in the vibe with sustainability.
Yes, indeed. 5 years ago, 11 partners from Ljubljana joined forces and had just one answer, just one question to answer, and which is there any alternative way of treating invasive plants except for just destroying them? It was a 3 years long project, and the outcome was, I think, 65 inventions, or 56 was it, I don't know. Some of them are patented now. One of the outcome was the complete production of making paper, either machine way or handmade, with a plant that is highly invasive, and it's called in English Japanese knotweed. I think it's a pest in every country. So I'm here at WTM, I'm printing on a paper that is made from this invasive plant. If you're not familiar, if everyone is not familiar with the plant, Google it. It's actually really interesting that it's on a list of healing plants. It's edible. You can make pie of it, but it takes our fertile land.
So maybe my last question for you is, I mean, I have an answer for it, but I'm curious what you have to say. In this era where everything is digitalized and we live so often through screens and through our phones, I think there's a real pleasure and stepping out of your everyday life in turning to something analog and mechanical. In your opinion, how can analog, even historical technology like printmaking by hand, relate to us today in our digitalized world?
I'm sorry, could you repeat, in what way?
What way? How do you feel like it can provide a benefit for us, whether you're a tourist or just stepping out of your routine, which is so much engaged with just a computer or telephone screen, whether that's work or entertainment?
Well, of course, every time in past tools would direct the way of your creativity. So you change a tool, your creativity will follow also and adapt to this kind of tool. It's the same with printing. Once you have used digital software, as I said before, you skip many steps. So what are these steps? And you find out when you come to a print shop. What is this material? How does it sound? It's quite heavy. So what's the texture? How would you use it? Is there any other way to use it? And suddenly you end up spending one day and you would like to spend some more. So that's probably the shortest answer.
So it sounds like Ljubljana is a great place to visit for expectations or to be pleasantly surprised with what a wonderfully accessible city it is. And it promotes a sort of analog slowness that I think we're all lacking. And if you're on a holiday, that can be a really beneficial thing. You're unplugging. And you can unplug quite literally by engaging in some of the craft experiences that you can add on to your tourist visit to Slovenia and to Ljubljana. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to both of you for spending time with us. And now you have a waiting list of people wanting Ljubljana prints, so I'll let you get back to it. Thank you very much.